the war just got bigger. While the world was watching oil prices spike because of Iran, while analysts were debating whether China would move on Taiwan, while lawyers were arguing about Trump's tariffs in Washington, D.C., something happened in Beirut that changed everything. Israeli bombs struck the Lebanese capital today. Not on the outskirts. Not in a remote southern village. In the center of Beirut, a city of 2 million people. A city that has already lived through more wars, more destructions, and more rebuildings than almost any other place on Earth. And right now, as you watch this video, 1 million Lebanese civilians are on the roads, fleeing their homes, fleeing the bombs, fleeing the conflict that nobody voted for, that nobody chose, and that shows no sign of stopping. The Iran war has opened a second front, and the second front is Lebanon. This is Geo Polity. And this is the story of the war that just got bigger, what it means for Lebanon, for Israel, for the Western Alliance, and for the already fractured world order that is struggling to hold itself together. Welcome back to Geo Polity, the channel where global politics meets your daily reality. We do not just cover headlines. We connect them. We give you the context that turns breaking news into genuine understanding. If you have been following this channel over the past 3 weeks, you already know the first 3 chapters of this story. The oil shock triggered by Trump's war against Iran. The dangerous window opening for China to move on Taiwan while America is distracted. And the constitutional crisis of Trump defying his own Supreme Court over tariffs, while ordinary households pay the price. This is Chapter 4, and it may be the most consequential chapter yet. If you are new here, subscribe now. Because this story is moving every single day, and you need to be here for every update. Let us start with what happened today, because the speed of this escalation is itself part of the story. Israeli bombs struck central Beirut on the 18th of March 2026. The strikes killed more than 20 people and wounded dozens more in a single wave of attacks. They did not target military installations deep in southern Lebanon. They hit the heart of a capital city. Buildings collapsed. Fires burned. Families ran. At the same time, the Israeli military issued mass evacuation orders across southern Lebanon. The orders were broad, sweeping, and urgent. Get out now. Do not wait. Do not take anything you cannot carry. More than 1 million people complied. 1 million human beings, most of them with nothing but the clothes on their backs and whatever they could grab in minutes, got into cars, onto motorcycles, on foot, and they left. Highways that normally carry commuters and commerce became rivers of displacement, stretching for kilometers in every direction away from the bombs. 1 million people, in a country of fewer than 6 million. That is 1 in every 6 Lebanese citizens displaced in a single day. To understand why this is happening, and why it is happening now, we need to go back to the beginning of this chain of events. Because nothing in geopolitics happens in isolation. Everything has a cause. And the cause of what is happening in Lebanon today runs directly through Tehran. On the 28th of February 2026, the United States and Israel conducted coordinated military strikes on Iran. We covered this in detail in our first video, and if you have not seen it, the link is in the description. But the essential point is this. America and Israel struck Iran directly. Iran struck back. And Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy force, based in Lebanon, entered the conflict on Iran's side. Hezbollah began firing rockets into northern Israel on the 2nd of March. Not sporadic fire. Not symbolic gestures. 100 rockets per day sustained, targeting Israeli towns and cities in the north of the country. 500,000 Israeli citizens have been living in bomb shelters or internal displacement since the rockets began. Towns have been evacuated. Schools have been closed. An entire region of a country has effectively been driven underground. Israel's military chief was direct about the connection. The shockwaves of the Iran strikes, he said, are being felt in Lebanon. What Hezbollah is doing is not independent. It is coordinated. It is Iranian strategy executed by Lebanese proxies. And Israel will respond accordingly. The Israeli air campaign against Lebanon began in the first week of March. It targeted Hezbollah weapons stores, command infrastructure, and missile launch sites across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley. Hundreds of people were killed in those first strikes. Hundreds of thousands fled. And then, in the past 72 hours, Israel made a decision that changed the scale of this conflict entirely. Ground troops entered Lebanon. Not a limited incursion. Not a patrol. A ground operation designed, according to senior Israeli officials, to achieve one objective: the permanent military destruction of Hezbollah's capability to threaten northern Israel. And a senior Israeli official said something that sent a chill through every government monitoring this situation. "We are going to do to Lebanon what we did to Gaza." Those words landed like a bomb in every foreign ministry in the Western world. Because everyone knows what was done to Gaza. The scale of destruction. The civilian death toll, the displacement of an entire population, the years of bombardment that reduced entire neighborhoods to rubble, the suggestion that Lebanon, a country of 6 million people, a country with a functioning capital, a country that contains the ancient city of Beirut, one of the great cultural centers of the Arab world, could face a similar fate was not just alarming. It was a statement of intent that the governments of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Canada, and Italy felt they could not let pass without a public response. And so, on the 18th of March 2026, today, those 5 countries issued a joint statement. The statement was unusually direct for diplomatic language. A significant Israeli ground offensive into Lebanon, they said, would have devastating humanitarian consequences. It must be averted. The displacement of more than 1 million people is deeply alarming. They called on all parties to return to the ceasefire agreement. 5 of America's closest allies. 5 NATO members. 5 countries that have stood with the United States through decades of difficult decisions. All of them publicly telling Israel to stop. And Israel is not stopping. This moment, this fracture between the United States and its own closest allies over Israel's military operations is one of the most significant diplomatic developments of this entire crisis. And it deserves to be examined carefully, because it tells us something important not just about Lebanon, but about the state of the Western alliance itself. The United States, under Donald Trump, has given Israel its full and unconditional support. Trump's senior advisor has been personally managing Lebanon diplomacy. American military assets in the region are part of the same operational theater as Israeli forces. Washington has not joined the joint statement from its European allies. It has not called on Israel to stop. It has said, in effect, that Israel has the right to defend itself and to pursue its military objectives. This is not new as an American position. American support for Israel's right to defend itself has been consistent across both political parties for decades. But the scale of the current Israeli military operations, the ground invasion, the 1 million displaced, the bombs on Beirut, has stretched that unconditional support to a breaking point in the eyes of America's European partners. When the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Canada, and Italy issue a joint statement publicly contradicting American policy on a live military conflict, something significant is happening inside the Western alliance. These are not adversaries. These are friends, allies, partners in NATO, countries that share intelligence and military resources with the United States every single day. And today they said publicly, collectively, that what is happening in Lebanon is wrong and must stop. That fracture matters enormously, not just for Lebanon, for every future crisis where Western unity will be needed, for the credibility of NATO, for the ability of the United States to lead coalitions, for the question, which has been asked repeatedly over the past 3 weeks, of whether the rules-based international order still exists in any meaningful sense. Now let us talk about Hezbollah. Because it is impossible to understand this conflict without understanding what Hezbollah actually is and why Israel considers it an existential threat. Hezbollah was founded in 1982 during a previous Israeli intervention in Lebanon. It was created with Iranian support, trained by Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces, and funded by Tehran. In the decades since, it has grown from a militia into something far more formidable. It is a political party with seats in the Lebanese parliament. It is a social services provider running schools, hospitals, and welfare programs in Shia communities across Lebanon. And it is a military organization that possesses an arsenal that most experts estimate includes over 100,000 rockets and missiles. 100,000. That is not an exaggeration. It is the assessment of Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, and independent analysts who study the region. Hezbollah's arsenal is larger than the military stockpiles of most recognized nation-states. Its weapons range from simple unguided rockets that can reach Israeli towns near the border, to precision-guided missiles that can strike targets deep inside Israel, to anti-ship missiles that could threaten Israeli naval vessels in the Mediterranean. For Israel, this arsenal, sitting on its northern border, controlled by an organization that has repeatedly stated its goal is the destruction of the Israeli state, represents a security threat that it has long said it cannot live with indefinitely. The Iran war gave Israel both the motivation and, in its view, the necessity to address that threat now rather than later. For Lebanon, the situation is almost impossibly tragic. Because Lebanon as a state is not Hezbollah, the Lebanese army is not Hezbollah. The Lebanese government is not Hezbollah. Lebanon is a complex, fractured, multi-sectarian country that has spent decades trapped between its powerful neighbor to the south and the Iranian-backed organization that operates as a state within a state on its own territory. When Israeli bombs fall on Lebanon, they do not only fall on Hezbollah fighters. They fall on a country that has already been shattered by economic collapse, by the catastrophic Beirut port explosion of 2020, by decades of political dysfunction, and by a financial crisis that destroyed the savings of an entire generation. Lebanon was already on its knees. This war may be what breaks it entirely. Let us now talk about the humanitarian situation, because numbers on a screen can become abstract. 1 million is just a figure unless you understand what it means in human terms. These are families loading whatever they can into cars at 3 a.m. because their phones received an emergency alert telling them to leave immediately. These are elderly people who have already survived multiple previous Israeli invasions of Lebanon, 1978, 1982, 2006, being told to flee again. These are children who do not understand why their home, their school, their street suddenly no longer exists. These are farmers who cannot harvest their crops, shop owners who cannot open their businesses, doctors who cannot reach their patients. They are going north toward Beirut. Some are going to relatives in other parts of the country. Some are trying to cross the border into Syria, a country that is itself in the middle of its own reconstruction after a devastating civil war. Many have nowhere to go. The United Nations has described the displacement as one of the most rapid mass movements of people it has seen anywhere in the world in recent years. Aid agencies are warning that Lebanon's infrastructure, already close to collapse before this war, cannot absorb this scale of displacement. Food, water, shelter, medical care, all of it is under catastrophic strain. And the bombs are not stopping. So what are the possible paths forward? What does this crisis look like in the days and weeks ahead? The first path is a negotiated ceasefire. The 5 Western nations who issued today's joint statement are actively pushing for this. Qatar and Egypt, which have served as intermediaries in previous Middle Eastern ceasefires, are engaged. The United Nations Security Council is meeting in emergency session. In theory, a ceasefire agreement that pulls Israeli forces back from Lebanon and stops Hezbollah rocket fire is achievable. It has happened before. In 2006, after 34 days of war, a UN Security Council resolution ended the fighting and established a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. But the conditions today are different from 2006 in one critical way. In 2006, the United States ultimately supported the diplomatic process that ended the war. Today, the Trump administration's position is that Israel should be allowed to complete its military objectives. Without American pressure on Israel to accept a ceasefire, the diplomatic path becomes enormously more difficult. The second path is a prolonged ground war. Israel pushes through southern Lebanon, attempts to clear Hezbollah forces from the territory south of the Litani River, and installs a security buffer zone by force. This would take weeks or months. It would result in thousands of additional casualties on both sides. It would destroy much of what remains of southern Lebanese infrastructure. And it would almost certainly radicalize a new generation in ways that create the next conflict even before this one ends. The third path is the most dangerous. Escalation beyond Lebanon. Hezbollah has missiles that can reach Tel Aviv. If Israel's ground operation deepens and Hezbollah feels it has nothing left to lose, the scale and range of its rocket attacks could expand dramatically. Iran, which is already directly at war with the United States and Israel, could choose to further escalate through other proxies in the region. Yemen's Houthi forces have already been launching attacks on shipping in the Red Sea throughout this crisis. The war that started as a U.S.-Israel operation against Iran's nuclear program has already spread to Lebanon. The question that nobody can answer with certainty right now is whether it will stay there, or whether it will continue to expand until it becomes something that nobody who started it fully intended or can control. Let us bring this back to the 4-video story we have been telling on this channel. Because these events are not separate threads. They are one rope, pulling in one direction. Oil prices are at $100 a barrel because the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted by the Iran war. That affects every household's energy and petrol bills. China is watching America's military overstretching across the Middle East and calculating whether this is the moment to move on Taiwan. That threatens the semiconductor supply that powers the entire global technology economy. Trump's tariffs were ruled illegal by his own Supreme Court, and he defied that ruling, shaking the foundations of the American constitutional order and costing every household over $1,000 that they will never get back. And now Lebanon is being invaded. 1 million people are fleeing, and America's closest allies are publicly breaking with Washington over the scale of the destruction. One war, one set of decisions. For separate crises cascading across the global system simultaneously. This is what historians mean when they talk about inflection points. Moments when multiple pressures converge at the same time. Moments when the structures that normally manage and contain conflict are unable to keep up with the pace of events. Moments that, looked back on from a distance of years or decades, are clearly when the old order ended and something new, for better or for worse, began. We are in one of those moments, right now, today, and the people paying the highest price for it are not sitting in the White House, or in the Knesset, or in the halls of the Supreme Court, or in the offices of Goldman Sachs. They're on a road in southern Lebanon with their children and whatever they could carry, looking back at the smoke rising from the place where their home used to be. That is what this is about. At its core, underneath all the strategy and the geopolitics and the military analysis. It is about people. And what happens to people when the decisions of the powerful move faster than the conscience of the world? Geo Polity exists to make sure that those people are seen, that their story is told, that the connections between their suffering and the decisions made in distant capitals are made visible to as many people as possible. If this video gave you something, a clearer picture, a deeper understanding, a genuine connection between events that seemed separate, please like it now. That single action is the most important thing you can do to help this channel reach more people who need this kind of reporting. Subscribe if you are not already here. This story is moving every single day. Episode 5 is already forming. You do not want to miss it. Share this video with someone who has been watching the news and feeling overwhelmed by events they cannot quite connect. Give them the map. Give them the context. Give them Geo Polity. And leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Israel should stop? Do you think the Western alliance is fracturing beyond repair? Do you think this war will stay in Lebanon or get bigger? We read every comment. Your perspective shapes what we cover next. This is Geo Polity. Stay informed. Stay analytical. And we will see you in the next one.